least have a background in understanding the form of the text that we're going to be reading. So, we're going to be reading an epic poem. Basically, it's a long narrative, story-driven poem, which used to be told through speech. It was a told story. It was spoken. You would have these storytellers, and they would tell these stories. Oftentimes, these epic tales were made to entertain people and to sort of give them some guidance on how they're supposed to live their lives. Like, it teaches kids lessons. It's like when you read like a kid's book to like your little brother or sister or little cousin. You're trying to teach them a lesson. So whether that lesson is it's good for you to go to sleep instead of staying up crying all night, or share with other people. Whatever the lesson is, it's trying to get something out of the reader, and it's the same thing that they're doing here. So here's what I'm gonna have you guys do. Because I know y'all are tired of listening to me talk at you this whole class. So I'm going to set you guys loose. I'm going to have you guys read this page. So you'll read this paragraph up here. So reading here, here, and then reading through each of these bullet points off the side. I'll give you, this isn't too long of a page. I'll give you about 6 minutes or so. 5 or 6 minutes probably should get you through that. I would write down any kind of notes that you see that are more beneficial for you to recognize. We'll talk through some of this stuff a little bit more completely here in a minute, but I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes to work through that, read it, and take some notes. If you want to write them on paper, you can. If you want to type them on Google Docs, it's fine. However, it's going to be best for you to keep up with. Okay, it looks like most of us have had a chance to work through that section here. So real quick, I just want to highlight a couple of things out of this section that I want to make sure that you're familiar with, because it's going to make a lot more sense of why in the world in this story are they doing this thing. It's going to help you understand it a little bit better because of the culture at the time, the way that stories were told. I want you to at least be familiar with, now that you see it written and you're reading it as opposed to listening to it, I want you to understand why certain things are the way that they are. So here we have this epic long poem. It relates important events in history. Most of the time you're going to have an epic hero as the sort of main character that we're following. This epic hero most of the time is supernaturally talented. They're given some kind of divine gift that is beyond what a normal human being can do. It's not like choosing Fred does exactly the same stuff that you can do, and there's no difference. This is like finding somebody that's way beyond, like they're way smarter or have more wisdom, they're stronger, whatever the case may be for that particular hero. That's the kind of characteristics you're going to find. They're going to be strong, brave. They'll be from some kind of noble birth, this high birth. They're like, a king or a prince or princess or whatever that they might be. They'll be famous most of the time for the deeds that they've done. And they're going to be a very effective leader in battle and just in general. That's just how your epic heroes work. That were the characteristics that the culture cared about at the time when they were created. And it's sort of the thing that sort of stuck around as the archetype or the main way that we set up characters. Now you have the Iliad and the Odyssey. So you have the Iliad and the Odyssey. These are both stories told by Homer. And they help to inspire a lot of the really great epics that we read now. Like in my senior class, we're reading Beowulf, which is absolutely awesome. And it's such a good story. It's one of the first ones from Old English that's actually written down story, which is very interesting. And it owes its creation to this epic form that Homer sort of helped to make more famous. And now this is how it normally set up. These are the literary elements you're going to see. The first one, opening invocation to the muse. So the speaker always starts off the poem by saying, hey, muse, this, whatever it is, I need inspiration to tell this story to the best of my ability. And that's how they normally do. They want to get some kind of inspiration, be able to tell this story so that it represents how awesome the epic hero is. Because most of the time they're telling this story, it's for entertainment, but also it may have some actual history sort of dug in there as well. So it's again, you're trying to get your readers captivated and sort of their attention caught into the story. Most of the time, they start the story in media res. This you will need to know for sure, forever, for always. In media res, this is one of the best ways to start off your story, especially if you're having an epic and you're having to tell people and you're talking to them for 4 hours and trying to keep their attention. Well, how are you going to keep people's attention? In the beginning, once upon a time, there was a dude that lived in a village and there was a problem and a bad guy and he wanted to kill him. Ugh, no, that sucks. That's an awful beginning, right? It doesn't make you feel excited to read. If your story starts off with, as he slit the dragon's throat and pulled out its entrails, he was able to fully relish in his victory over the monster. Yeah, you've got me. That sounds great. That sounds like a really good story because you're starting me in the action. Something has already happened. You're sort of letting me just sort of think, okay, how did it get here? I get to sort of think that on my own and come up with that idea. So it keeps me sort of engaged, as well as you giving me some really fun stuff to start off. Keeps your audience engaged. That's how you want people to pay attention, just like you would see like a YouTube video. Do YouTube videos most of the time from your popular YouTubers start with, Hey guys, this is the vlog for today, vlog 1423. We're gonna have a fun time. Does it start off that way? No. Most of the time they're gonna show you something that happens in the vlog first. It's gonna have like a little snippet of like a dude jumping into a pool while on fire, and it's like, this is what you can expect. Then they do their intro, right? They start off the day after they've given you something to get you hooked, to get you sort of get your attention. Okay? So that's what we're gonna see. With Odyssey, it starts off immediately with Odysseus doing something. He's in the middle of action. The war has already happened 10 years ago. Now he's starting to actually do something. All right. Now, you will notice a lot of the language is very elevated, it's very lofty, like this elegant kind of language, where when they talk about like the main character, he was the grandest of all the champions. As he strode across the sunset, he was the only king, blah, 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 or whatever. That's normally how they like to say it. They try and really enhance the feel of this is some kind of royalty, or this dude is very famous, and they try to really rehash that to you by using a lot higher language words. Objective tone, most of the time, your speaker is not going to have feelings towards a character. So instead of your narrator, the person telling the story, saying, Odysseus, who's the greatest person of all time, and he's like my favorite, I love, oh my gosh, he's just the greatest. Instead of them like actually feeling attached to the character, it's more like Odysseus was the greatest warrior, he had killed these things, this is how his story goes. So it's a lot more detached. The narrator doesn't feel as close to the characters, where it's like, man, I really hate that main character. I want him to die. And like, you don't get that from the narrator. The objective tone is, here's a thing that happens. It's going to be very interesting, the thing that happens, but I'm not going to make you try and feel one way or another about it. I'm just going to tell you the facts, and you can make with it what you will. Then you have, well, how are they going to remember these super long stories? Remember, the story that we're reading, Odyssey, when written down, is about that thick of a story. In terms of like written down, this is the abridged version. So this is like the shortened version of this story, written down. Now somebody in history knew this whole thing and told it to people, start to finish. This is nearly like 500 pages worth of material that they remembered in their brain. How are they going to remember all this stuff and to make it where it's so devoted to their memory that they can remember these things? Well, they have this rhythm to the speaking. The way that they tell the story, because it's a spoken story, it's not one that you have to be very careful about how you say it. They're trying to get you involved. They want you to be able to remember it and to really catch on. So most of the time, the poet is going to make the meter or the rhythm of the speaking flow very well so that it keeps you engaged. In terms of the original Greek, the Odyssey uses like a 6 meter. So like there's 6 beats per each line. So every line that you have, you've got 6 beats, which makes it feel fast. It's like a fast-paced kind of story because there's a lot that happens very, very quickly. He goes from a ship to like stabbing a cyclops in the eye. It goes very fast and it's constantly moving. It doesn't really give you a chance to rest. And then you have epithets. Epithets are just like nicknames for these people. Most of the time you're going to see, like with Odysseus, he'll be called the son of Laertes or the rosy-fingered Dawn. One reason, think about it this way. You're telling this 500-page story to people for like 5 hours. And if you, let's say I was in a conversation with Jacob. I'm talking with Jacob, and I keep saying to Jacob about everything that Jacob has done because Jacob was the guy that did the things that Jacob did. You see how when I said his name over and over and over again, it gets just grating, and it's just like, ugh, can you just call him something else? that's the way it was. And for the people to remember, oh yeah, that's the guy. He would use different words to describe him. So the son of Laertes, Odysseus, did this thing. The rosy-fingered Dawn was willing to do whatever he needed. It mixes it up. It makes it where it doesn't feel as like taxing on you as a listener to understand what's happening. Then you have the epic simile. Basically, the reason why this thing is so huge in terms of reading it is they would use these long similes to compare what was happening in the story to something that you would understand as part of the culture. So oftentimes the things that you'll find is something that could have taken like 2 lines to say, this guy jumped from the ship into the water. It will go from that to about 16, 17 line dialogue about the stars falling from the heavens or whatever. Like they'll compare something and they'll use a simile so that you sort of understand what's happening, and it made the story more exciting. When you're listening to it, it's great. It's like, oh, you know, it sort of adds some extra images to your mind while you're listening, and it's like, this is awesome. It's like a movie. You get to see more things. Unfortunately, when we read it, we're like, they're saying the exact same thing 3 different times for like 2 pages worth of stuff. And he could have said this in like 1 sentence, but he didn't. He had to explain the whole thing. But you got to keep in mind, the reason they did that is because it helped jog the poet's memory. They could remember it. They had a specific rhythm to it, and it has a specific way that it flowed. It's like a song. You remember the lyrics of songs a lot more than you probably remember what we talked about last week in one of the lessons. It's just how it is. If something's more lyrical, it has more of a rhythm and a beat to it, it's going to be easier to remember. And it helped to fill out that meter too, so that their beats, they stayed on track. So if it was going to end off before you get to that 6th beat, this might give them a chance to finish it out where it actually sounds good and it makes sense. That's what you're looking at here with this text. So again, this week, make sure you're doing those Trojan War annotations, which is, again, on Google Docs, answering those 4 questions. Do the 6-word summaries on it. That's due Friday. This assignment, again, work through MemBean like you know to get your 30 minutes each week. Then this assignment, you're doing 6 vocab words and defining those in a Google Doc, then answering these 3 questions. That's it. Y'all have any questions about stuff I'm asking you to do this week? All right. So that's what we're going to be working on. If y'all have anything that you're confused about during the course of the week,